Do you think the problems of our generation can simply be accredited to this idea of us being young and learning how to grow up? Or are we different? Is Gen Z unique?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. And what's at the crux of this question is what actually is a generation. So I had someone on my show a few months ago called Dr. Jenny Bristow, and she's an expert on generational studies. So I was asking her these questions about what a generation actually is. Is it defined by the characteristics you have at any moment? Well, it can't be because I'm 19, you're 18, and we're going to be experiencing certain things that are naturally going to be happening just by virtue of us having hit puberty. We're now a little bit older, we're getting into adulthood. We're at that time of our lives when we all have these universal experiences, just like 40-year-olds would in Gen X, or what Gen Y, the millennials would, or boomers would. So it can't be age. So what is it? And at the crux of it, really, I believe, and a few other psychologists and sociologists and whatever else believe this, someone like Gene Twang, who's good on this, is technology. I think that's at the core of a lot of things that we don't actually attribute it to. And that's what really makes us unique as a generation. Technology, you think about the internet and social media that we're growing up on, but that's not all technology means. You know, it's even back to the first generation when, I don't know, the steam engine was invented. That changed the way they were experiencing their lives. So I do think that some things are just transient and part of growing up and adolescence and becoming an adult. But there are certain things in our generation, Gen Z, specific to the technology that we've had available to us that we've grown up on, that no one else in history has ever experienced.
Yeah, we have problems that no one else has experienced. And although every generation has had those things, like the steam engine or whatever, I think ours has been a big radical shift that no one knows how to prepare for.
Yeah, I think we're suffering as victims of our own success in many ways. And it's easy to forget that. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and speaking actually, instead of some people our age, going towards people like monks and asking them what they think of the current situation. And what it's taught me is that really we are victims of our own success right now. Things are subjectively bad, but objectively they've never been this good. And the reason why we've got this felt sense of suffering is because we've started putting the cart before the horse. And what I mean by this is we've started prioritizing the one percenters, the things that are marketable online as optimizing our lifestyles and that look good, instead of focusing on the boring things like getting 8 hours of sleep, drinking water, having social connection, and loving your family, meeting them as often as possible. That leads to a fundamentally cracked system with room for a lifestyle that looks like one that would bring you happiness, because you've got all of these short term instant gratification tools at hand. So people are here very confused as to why they're not happy when they're going to saunas, they're hitting the gym and fighting their demons, they're using nose strips to sleep with, but they're still left asking the same question constantly, which is, why do I not fulfilled? Why does my life have no meaning? And why do I feel so deprived of any real reason to pursue anything?
Yeah, we're left with these same key questions everyone's always had, but we try to find solutions in things that no one's ever had.
I saw this really interesting statistic the other day, and it was about actually the success that we are having. And it's a perfect example of how the news and this sort of event bias we have with a 24 news cycle and a 24-hour algorithm on TikTok to scroll through. The events that keep on being fed to us, they don't give us the ability to see these slow burners that accumulate over time and lead to bigger and more important things. So this statistic, it was about extreme world poverty, which is categorized as people living off of less than $1.90 a day. 200 years ago, 80% of the planet lived in extreme poverty. Now today, it's 8%. So 1 in 20 people, rather than 8 out of 10 people, are now living in extreme poverty. Now, obviously, we don't want anyone to be living in extreme poverty, but that's a huge improvement. And by the way, 37% of that decrease came in the last 40 years. So this is what I mean by us objectively living in better conditions than ever. We have the ability to eat pretty much whenever we want, unrestricted, but it's not that causes the problem in terms of a lack of something. It's actually, rather than suffering from a lack of resources, we're suffering from contending with overabundance and how to restrict ourselves.
Right. I saw something along those lines of like how objectively good we are. Our reading rates, literacy rates around the world are another one of those statistics that are incredibly high compared to even 50 years ago. And so in all of these measures, our species continues to see more and more success. And yet, right now, our generation is suffering from high suicide rates and high depression rates and this growing chasm between genders that is so interesting. People seem to be so divided. Why do you think that people are divided among this objective success?
I think there are different factors at play. One of them linked to this overabundance that I'm talking about and the contention we have with that is that we actually get led to make up some problems, make up issues for our entertainment. It's classic, when you're sat in high school and you're with people that you're not too familiar with, the first thing you do, or maybe just I do, maybe I'm just a prick, is you go towards the negative, cynical things and you bond over those. You bond over the hatred of an outgroup or a teacher or a subject, rather than taking the risk of proclaiming that you love something and hoping that you both share that. So that's one thing, is just boredom amongst this overabundance. But another thing is social media and the incentives at play. There are no incentives really at the moment, at least if you want to take a shortcut to get to success. And we can speak about what that means versus what people think it means. There's no incentive there to be nuanced and take it slow and have in-depth conversations like we're having now, really. What would get more views and more comments and more engagement would be if we had a debate and one of us tried to dunk on the other person, right? Because we've all got this negativity bias as humans and we all want to see crazy shit. And, I do too, but I have to keep on reminding myself that sometimes it's not for the best and, it's obvious stuff, but just because something feels the best to watch and consume, it doesn't mean that it's the healthiest for you. So social media algorithms, they promote this bifurcation, this divide of the sexes that you see and everything else. You see it in politics, you see it in different arguments. People come to these radical conclusions and they get pushed. And I think pushed is actually the wrong word, pulled by the algorithms into their own echo chambers, and they stay there.
You just finished watching a clip of the Grateful podcast featuring Elliot Bewick. If you enjoyed, you'll like this full episode with him even more. I recommend you go click this right now. Click it. Come on. I know you want to.